Trump administration is now 0 for 2. Both versions of its Muslim ban have now been blocked by the courts. On Wednesday, just hours before it's supposed to take into effect, Trump's ban on refugees and the granting of visas from 6 Muslim-majority countries was blocked by federal district judge Derek Watson in a case argued by the state of Hawaii.
That's a big reason why Hawaii brought this case, is because it's really something that hits us to the core. If you have an order that's coming out there that's taking us back half a century to a time when there was discrimination by nations of origin or by religion, that's something that we have to speak up against.
Hawaii contended Trump's revised ban, signed March 6th, had not changed. Essentially, it was still unconstitutional because it discriminates against Muslims, while arguing that would impact tourism, on which the state heavily relies. We reached Noor Zafar, a fellow at the Center for Constitutional Rights.
For me, this was kind of a bit expected. I mean, I'm glad that this is how the judge ruled, and I'm particularly happy that the judge ordered a nationwide stay on the TRO as opposed to what we saw out of, I believe it was Minnesota earlier, where relief was just granted to the individual plaintiff. But so I was really happy to see that the judge, for kind of all the reasons that I think legal experts and advocates were anticipating, decided to halt the application of the Muslim ban, I guess, 2.0.
Can you talk about what this means for the Trump administration's efforts to block Muslims from selective, countries that they've selected?
I think this is a significant blow for those efforts, particularly because the main section of the Hawaii judge's ruling kind of talked about how the intent to discriminate against Muslims is very apparent both in this new order and in the previous order, and that intent is really going to stay because of all the various Islamophobic and anti-Muslim statements that Trump and his administration officials have made both pre and post-election. So, I mean, I think that the court and courts increasingly are realizing that this is a ban on Muslims. This is kind of Donald Trump making good on his promise, on his campaign promise to ban Muslims from this country. And I think courts are seeing kind of just the blatant anti-Muslim animus behind the ban. And in terms of, the 7 and I guess now 6 countries listed in the second EO being countries where the U.S. has had a role in kind of destabilizing those countries, I think that's apparent, and I think that's kind of something that's in the background, especially when it comes to the halt on refugees. Like I think in terms of when we saw the mobilization of people at the airports, when we saw kind of the grassroots activists and people speaking out, part of that I think was an acknowledgement that the U.S. has a role to play in creating this massive refugee population and creating conditions of instability in those countries where people are fleeing from. So I think that acknowledgement definitely animates a lot of the people-powered protests that we saw against the ban.
So the Trump administration has argued that these bans are necessary to keep Americans safe. I wanted your response to that, and as well as what your message is for people that are concerned about this, because the fight's not over. This is just a temporary ban. Can you respond to both those points, please?
Right. So with regard to the first point, I think again, people kind of see through just the blatant lie that is the fact that this ban is needed to keep Americans safe, because and we saw this kind of in the second iteration of the Muslim ban. The administration presented a little bit more evidence justifying its listing of these 6 countries and offering, for example, the statistic that 300 individuals who have come into this country as refugees are under FBI counterterrorism investigation. But that statistic is really unclear and problematic in a lot of ways. One, we don't know if the refugees or the people under investigation are indeed from the 6 countries that are listed. And two, we've kind of seen in the in the way in which FBI counterterrorism charges and prosecutions and investigations are launched, there's a wide variety of very kind of, non-criminal and not even close to criminal conduct that can lead the FBI to open an investigation. So just kind of, if we kind of parse that number a little bit, I think it's really, it doesn't hold up. It doesn't kind of justify the drastic measure of banning people from these 6 countries. So yeah, I think that's kind of, the evidence again is just not there, and the whole national security rationale, there's no numbers to back it up. And given again the clear anti-Muslim animus that we know this administration espouses, courts kind of see through that national security pretext and are really seeing this as as it is, which is a Muslim ban.
And what's your message for people that are concerned about this? This ban is only temporary. So what's your advice to people that want to stay involved?
I think kind of the most important thing to do is to maintain that energy of coming out and protesting this ban. I think, when the initial ban came out, the courts ruled the way that they did, I think, in no small part because of the massive airport protests. I think just the mass of people who came out and said, this is not something that we're going to stand for, indirectly, I think, really influenced the way that the courts approach this issue. And I think moving forward, especially as the administration really tries to refine its legal arguments to kind of clean up the sloppiness of the initial iteration of the ban, I think it's going to be even more important for people to continue to come out, to continue to protest, and to continue to resist this type of blatant bigotry.
The Real News will keep following this story.